Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Hari Vrajakacharya Astotar Satashi Shimati Stavangra Sabhaya Charana Ravinda Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada Ki ISKCON BBD Foundercharya Save the whole world Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Hari Vrajakacharya Astotar Satashi Shimati Stavangra Shri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Namacharya Shri Rastakur Ki Prem Sagaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Govardhana Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Braj Bhumi Shri Vrindavana Ki Navadip Mayapur Dhama Ki Purushtam Chaturdan Pujama Ki Ganga Mai Ki Jamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Tulasi Maharani Ki Shri Snana Yatra Maha Mahotsava Ki Jai Nitai Go Premanandi All glories to some glories, all glories to glories, all glories to glories, all glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So, I'm not going to read this verse today. Garuda asked me to speak on the Snana Yatra festival and things associated with that. So, that's what I was planning to do. So, what I'll do is first, because the first 24 years of Lord Chaitanya's life, he lived in Navadvip Mayapur area. Then the subsequent 24 years, he was in Jagannath Puri, and also he travelled around India at different times. But one of the things that was quite prominent when the Lord was in Puri was the various pastimes or the various festivals, etc., associated with Jagannath. And many times there are several places where there's descriptions of Lord Chaitanya participating in these festivals in Puri. So there's quite a significant part of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. And also you'll see that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita there are lots of descriptions related to deity worship where the Lord was interacting with various deities in different ways. So it's quite an interesting section. So the first one is, these are all from Madhya Lila, and the first one is chapter 1 and text 121. And it says, after collecting these books, so Lord Chaitanya, he went to South India and he visited temple, and he got the Krishna Karamrita and the Brahma Samhita, which are two very important books in the Gaudiya line, especially for us, the Brahma Samhita, because this is Lord Brahma glorifying Krishna. And actually, every one of these verses in the Brahma Samhita are considered to be like Paribhasa Sutras or key verses in our philosophy. After collecting these books, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned to Jagannath Puri. At that time, the bathing ceremony of Jagannath was taking place, and he saw it. When Jagannath was absent from the temple, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who could not see him, felt separation and left Jagannath Puri to go to a place known as Halalanath. Alalanath is also known as Brahmagiri. This is purport. Alalanath is also known as Brahmagiri. The place is about 14 miles from Jagannath Puri and is also on the beach. There is a temple of Jagannath there. At the present moment, a police station and post office is situated there because so many people come to see the temple. The word Anavasra is used when Jagannath cannot be seen in the temple. After the bathing ceremony, Snana Yatra, Lord Jagannath apparently becomes sick. He is therefore removed to his private apartment where no one can see him. Actually, during this period, renovations are made on the body of the Jagannath deity. This is called Nava Yovana. Nava means new, Yovana means, Nava Yovana means like a new body or becomes youthful again. During the Rath Yatra ceremony, Lord Jagannath once again comes before the public. Thus, for 15 days after the bathing ceremony, Lord Jagannath is not visible to any visitors. Then we go to chapter 11. I just wanted to read a few of these things, just so you kind of get a sense of the importance and relevance of Jagannath to us, because it's very important in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So this is text 60. When the king asked the Bhattacharya, so this is King Prataparudra, or Maharaj Prataparudra, asked the Bhattacharya, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya of course, when the bathing ceremony, Snana Yatra, of Lord Jagannath would take place, the Bhattacharya replied that there were only 3 days left before the ceremony. Then, after thus encouraging the king, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya returned home. On the day of Lord Jagannath's bathing ceremony, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy at heart. So Lord Chaitanya was very pleased when he was participating in these festivals of Lord Jagannath. Upon seeing the bathing ceremony of Lord Jagannath, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very happy. But when Lord Jagannath retired after the ceremony, Lord Chaitanya became very unhappy because he could not see him. So as I was saying before, so we're seeing Jagannath today that then for 15, it varies, sometimes because it's all done astrologically and it's according to the lunar calendar and the various tithis, but it usually ranges from about 10 to 15 days. That Jagannath is in this period of convalescence, and it's called the Anavasra. Purport. After the bathing ceremony of Sri Jagannath, which takes place just a fortnight before the Rath Yatra ceremony, the body of Lord Jagannath deity is repainted, and this takes about a fortnight to complete. And actually in Puri, when they do it, this period is divided into 7 two-day periods and 1 single-day period. So there's certain things that happen during those different 2 days period, and the last day of the renovations they do all the final touch-ups and things like that. This period is called Anavasra. There are many who visit the temple to see Lord Jagannath regularly every day, and for them this retirement after the bathing ceremony is unbearable. They're feeling so much separation. And especially when you go to some of these traditional temples in India, you can really see, like you go to Govindaji in Jaipur, and you really see how attached the devotees there are to the deity, because every single day of their life, they come and they take darshan of Govindaji. Same you'll see in Radha Raman. There's a very sort of close-knit community around that temple, and those devotees, they all just live around the temple there. And every single day they come and take darshan of Radha Raman. And also you'll see that in definitely in Udupi, and then in Natwar, where they have Nataji. And then also in Banki Bihari. Now you'll see like when it's darshan time, how people are running to take darshan of Banki Bihari. They're all so enthusiastic to come and see him. And for them it's part of their daily life just to have this darshan of the Lord. And when they can't see the Lord, they become immersed in separation. And this is all part of the transcendental exchange between the Lord and his devotees, is this meeting and separation. And Krishna arranges these occasions of separation. And particularly you can see this in the Vrindavan pastimes, and the acharyas, they go into lengthy descriptions on these Vrindavan pastimes, how Krishna manifests these various events, if you like, just to churn the separation, to deepen the devotee's attachment for him. Because it's all about the transcendental exchange between the Lord and his devotees, deepening this affection, this attachment that the devotees feel for Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt Lord Jagannath's absence from the temple very much. So he's feeling the separation, but he's also showing us how to cultivate these transcendental emotions. And then the last verse from this chapter. Due to separation from Lord Jagannath, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt the same great anxiety that gopis feel in separation from Krishna. In this condition, he gave up all association and went to Alalanath. So again, it's describing how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he could not tolerate the separation from Jagannath, so he went somewhere else. And then from the 13th chapter, we have a few verses there, which is quite nice. Excuse me. How was it? 13th chapter, 3 to 24. Okay, so this is also quite a nice section of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. All glories to the listeners of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Please hear the description of the dancing of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at the Rath Yatra festival. His dancing is very enchanting. Please hear of it with great attention. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole description of the dancing because it goes on for the whole chapter. It describes all the different kirtan parties. It describes the interaction of Lord Chaitanya with all the devotees. And it's quite a wonderful description. But Krishna's Kaviraj is saying, please hear of it with great attention. So it's something that's really actually quite amazing. The next day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his personal associates got up in the dark and attentively took their early morning baths. So making the point, just a side point here, that they attentively took their early morning baths. So they're very focused on cleanliness and purity. It's not like they just sort of splash water around and, they make sure they cleanse themselves properly. Why? Because they're going to be seeing the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his personal associates then went to see the ceremony of Pandu Vijay. During this ceremony, Lord Jagannath leaves the throne and gets up onto the car. So everything they do in the Jagannath temple, there's some ceremony behind it. Like when they take the Jagannath out of the temple to the Snan Vedi, or the Snan, first off he goes to Snan Mandap, and this is the day before Snan Yatra. They take him out of and this is called Pandi. And there's a massive festival. And of course, we have these little deities of Jagannath here. The deities of Jagannath, I've never personally seen them, but I've seen videos and stuff, and they look to be about 7 or 8 foot tall. So you can imagine how much they weigh. They're extremely heavy. Even like I remember moving the Jagannath deities in Mayapur when they were renovating the temple there, and Balaram I could lift. But Jagannath was so heavy. I couldn't lift him. I mean, now I probably couldn't lift any of them, but I remember them being very, very heavy. And they're only about this tall, whereas Jagannath in Puri is quite large. And you can see, and it describes when they're doing the Pahandi here, how they're moving the deities out of the temple, and they put these cotton, I think they call them tulas or something, they could put these cotton sacks, they're sewn up with cloth sacks and they're full of cotton wadding. They put the deity on that because he's too heavy to carry all the way. So they move him from one sack to the next, and the sacks often burst, and there's this loud cracking sound as they burst. And you can see when they do this ceremony called Pandu Vijay, is they have this, it's really interesting, it's kind of like a crown, but it's made out of bamboo, and it's got all these sort of, sticks coming up, and there's at the back there's a rope, and so as they're moving him, the whole crown thing's going, it's like a big fan going backwards and forwards, and it looks spectacular. It just looks really amazing, and his movements, it's described how he moves like a drunken elephant, and it's really amazing the way Jagannath moves, and it's very laborious, and you'll see also, because on top he has like I'm not sure what, maybe it's a carved crown or something, but it's a sort of like a cone that comes up top, and they have a rope on that as well, and they're pulling Jagannath by this rope. And you can see the pandas are really straining. It's like, all the veins are sort of bulging in their neck and stuff like that. Not an easy thing to do. And of course, we'd probably get a forklift and just move it with a forklift or something. But they and it's a real thing, and they're really attached to the service, and they're really proud to have the opportunity to serve the Lord like that. And I'm not going to go into it in a lot of detail, but all the different services, especially with these festivals, are done by particular groups of devotees. Like the Daitas are the ones who move the deity, and the Daitas are the descendants of Vishvavasu, and hopefully we'll get to that story, who was the person he's a Sabra. Sabra sometimes are defined as people who keep and eat pigs, sometimes described as fishermen, so I'm not sure which one's correct. But initially he was the one who was worshipping Jagannath in a previous manifestation. And then, like the descendants of Lalita, who's the wife of who was the daughter of Vishvavasu, all her descendants, they cook for Jagannath. So it's very kind of like, I can't remember the exact word for it, but it's all like, there's particular groups do particular services, no one else does those services. Huh? Group. Yeah, something like that. But it's very kind of like, there's almost like sampradayas, each sampradaya has its own thing. So during this ceremony, Lord Jagannath leaves his throne in the temple and gets up on the car. And it's quite amazing, like when you see him, I've seen these videos a number of times, when you see him coming out of the temple, it's quite something else. King Prataparudra in person, as well as his entourage, allowed the Pandavijay ceremony to be seen by the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they actually arranged for Lord Chaitanya and all his intimate associates to have quite a personal, like an up-close darshan of the Lord, because usually it's just the direct servants of the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his prominent devotees, Advaita Acharya, Nityananda Prabhu, and others were very happy to observe how Lord Jagannath began the Rath Yatra. They're very strongly built Daitas. So as I said, these are the descendants of Vishvavasu. Carriers of the Jagannath deity were as powerful as drunken elephants. They manually carried Lord Jagannath from the throne to the car. Purport. The word Daita refers to one who has received the mercy of the Lord. Lord Jagannath has a number of stalwart servants known as Daitas, so they're very strong. These servants do not come from very high caste families, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, but as I mentioned before, they keep pigs and they eat pigs or fish. But because they are engaged in the service of the Lord, they have been elevated to a respected position. Thus they are known as Daitas. These servants of Lord Jagannath take care of the Lord from the day of Snana Yatra up to the time the Lord is carried from the throne to the Rath car. So also during the Anavasra, it's the Daitas who are painting Lord Jagannath. So they become very, very expert, and they take care. And I'll describe it more. There's so many interesting things here. In the Chaitra Mahatmya, these Daitas are said to come from the Shabras, a caste that keeps and sells pigs. However, among the Daitas, there are also many from the Brahmana caste. These Daitas, coming from the Brahmana families, are called the Dayatapatis, or the leaders of the Daitas. The Dayatapatis offer food such as sweetmeats to Lord Jagannath during the Anavasra, the resting period after Snana Yatra. They also make the early morning offering of sweetmeats daily. It is said that during the Anavasra, Lord Jagannath suffers from fever, and the Dayatapatis offer him an infusion of drugs represented by fruit juice. It is said that in the beginning, Lord Jagannath was worshipped by the Shabras and was known as the deity Nilamadava. Later, when the deity was established in the temple, the Lord became known as Jagannath. Because the deities were taken from the Shabras devotees were elevated to the position of the Daitas. So there's an interesting story which is recorded, I believe it's in the Skanda Purana, but also in a book called the Jagannath Priya Nattakam, which Tamal Krishna Maharaj produced. I don't know who did the translation, but obviously someone translated it. But he produced it turned it into a drama, which was quite an interesting read. I haven't seen it around for a while, but I used to have it. It's quite a nice book. And essentially it tells the story of how Jagannath manifested. Now this took place quite some time ago, because there's two prominent deities within the world. So previously it was a deity called Nilamadava. And so this deity was like the presiding deity of the earth for the first half of Lord Brahma's life. And then Jagannath is the presiding deity of the earth for the second half of Lord Brahma's life. So he's just recently had his 50th birthday. So we're in that second part of Lord Brahma's life now. And so what happened was at some point King Nrsimha was ruling. And at some point, a brahmana, because it was quite common in those days that the brahmanas would go around and visit the courts of the king, and they would tell them stories and speak on shastra and things like that. So this brahmana came and he was telling the king about the glories of this deity called Nilamadhava. And King Nrsimha became intrigued, and he wanted to see this deity. He wanted to have darshan of this deity because he was a great devotee of Krishna. And so he sent out all his many sort of scouts to try and find this deity of Nilamadhava, because the deity was just, the way the deity was described was just incredible. And so he wanted to have darshan of this deity and just to serve the deity. So he sent out these scouts everywhere, and no one could find any trace of this deity. But one scout he sent out was a brahmana whose name was Vidyapati. And Vidyapati, when he was traveling around, he came to the kingdom of these Sabras, because the king of the Sabras was called Vishvavasu, and he had a daughter whose name was Lalita. And so anyhow, he stayed there for some time, and he noticed that while he was there, that Lalita's father, Vishvavasu, he would go out at night and he would come back. Every night he would go out and he'd come back, and he had this incredible fragrance when he came back on his body of camphor and musk and a guru and all these sandalwood and all these amazing fragrances, and he was intrigued by that. And in the meantime, Vishvavasu had convinced Vidyapati to marry his daughter Lalita, and so obviously he stayed there for a while when he married her. But at some point he was asking Lalita what was going on. Now Lalita had, with her father, because Lalita had been sworn to secrecy, so she was reluctant to say anything. But she was, well, he's my husband, so what can I do? I can't keep secrets from my husband. So eventually she told him that what was happening was her father was going out each night to worship Nilamadhava. And then Vidyapati was thinking he'd hit the jackpot, because this was his mission, was to find Nilamadhava. I'm just telling it in a short form, because this story is a whole book. There's a lot of information there. And anyhow, so he wanted to go and see Nilamadhava, but Vishvavasu was reluctant to allow him to do that. But somehow or other, through his wife Lalita, she pressured her father into allowing him to go. But he said, "Okay, I'll take you, but you have to be blindfolded. You can't see where I'm going." So then he agreed to that. And so what happened though is he asked his wife to sow some mustard seeds into a cloth, like a whole lot of mustard seeds. So as he was going, he was dropping mustard seeds. He went blindfolded, but he's dropping mustard seeds. So this then tells me that this must have happened somewhere in springtime, or just before springtime, because that's when the mustard seeds flower, or mustard flowers. And one thing that's really interesting in India with the deity worship is how the deity worship is all connected with various seasonal festivals. Just like, in the start of spring, there's a festival called Vasant Panchami. That's the first day of spring. So especially, and you'll see in ISKCON temples that the deities are always dressed in yellow for Vasant Panchami. But not many people understand the significance of this. Okay, it's the first day of spring, the sun's shining, maybe that's why. No, actually, it's because that's when the mustard's flowering. The mustard's flowering on the first day of spring, and mustard is bright yellow. The flowers are bright yellow. And I remember one year we had this experience. Sri Prahlad and Rukmini and myself we went to Natji. We took darshan of Nataji, and then from there we went up to Jaipur, and we were in Jaipur for the Vasant Panchami, and we saw they have an abhishek of Govindaji at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's very, very beautiful Abhishek. If you ever get the chance to see it, we're right down the front. It was really nice. But then from there we drove to Vrindavan, and so Govindaji was all dressed in yellow on the first day of Vasant Panchami, and then we drove from Vrindavan, from Jaipur to Vrindavan, and all the fields were just completely the same yellow from the mustard. So very, very beautiful. And it's kind of important that we understand how all these significant events in the lives of the people, rather than sort of keeping them separate, they connect them with the deity. So when it's springtime, because the mustard's flowering, then they dress the deities in yellow. When it's in summer, and we'll see that most of these festivals that are taking place, they all take place in the summer. Like we have one of the earlier festivals called Chandan Yatra. So what happens in Chandan Yatra is it's very hot. So Chandan Yatra has just recently finished in North India. Very, very hot. Extreme. It's like, I mean, it gets hotter here, but the humidity in Mayapur is just through the roof. It's just incredible humidity. I mean, I think yesterday in Mayapur it was 37 degrees. I was speaking to one of our devotees there in Mayapur. But they were saying, oh, it's so hot here, and it's because of the humidity. I mean, 37 here is not much at all. But the humidity is incredible. And so Chandan Yatra is like, like the sun is just beating down. It's really when the sun's at its peak. So what they do is they grind Chandan during the evening, and the next morning they cover the deity in Chandan. And Chandan's very cooling. And then what comes later is because the summer is getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and the humidity is starting to go up. And the only real relief you can get from this humidity is water. So they arrange for a pastime where Krishna is immersed in water or covered in water. And you'll see with especially with these temples of these festivals of Jagannath, all over North India, they follow the same festivals. Like for instance, you can go to Radha Raman. They have a Snana Yatra. They have a Ratha Yatra. Snana Yatra in the temple in Radha Raman in Vrindavan is very, very beautiful. They actually, what happens is all the young boys from the temple, for the days before they go down, they have new clay pots, because the thing is, when you have water in fresh clay pots, it keeps the water quite cool. Because there's some sort of evaporation thing happening through the clay. And they have tanks on the roof of the temple, and the boys, for several days beforehand, they're going down the Jamuna and they're bringing water for the deities in these new clay pots. And these new clay pots are then used later for the water pots for the drinking water of the deities. And so every time of these festivals, they always have they bring new things for the deities, and then they're used throughout the year. And so they put them in the tank on the roof, and they also put various fragrances in the water. And if you ever go to Radha Raman, you'll see there's a pipe that comes down in the middle of the courtyard, and it's got like a shower head on it, and a tap. So what they do is they bring him out and they put him under the shower, and he's bathed like that. And so, and then also after Snana Yatra, the humidity is going up and it starts to rain. So what happens is the Lord comes out on a chariot. And he's got a canopy over the chariot so he doesn't get wet. Yeah? And then what happens after that is, what's the next big festival? Coming up in about a month and a half time? No, that's the chariot with the canopy. No, it's Julan Yatra. Because it's so humid that water's not going to cool you. And actually water's almost unpleasant at that time. So you go on a swing. And you go, there's nice swinging motion. That's very cooling. Yeah? So there's all these different things that Krishna's doing, which are simply there for his pleasure. And we're so fortunate we can participate in these pleasurable pastimes of Krishna. We can see him having a wonderful time. And we can also join in. We can push him on the swing. We can pull him on the chariot. We can bathe him with water. We get to have this very close and intimate darshan. Yeah, so then he went and he had these mustard seeds. He was dropping mustard seeds. Vidyapati was dropping mustard seeds all the way to this place called Nilachala, which is now known as Puri. And this Nilachal hill, this is where he was worshipping Nilamadhava. And when he got there, Vishvavasu took off his blindfold and he saw this deity of Nilamadhava, and he was just struck with his beauty. And he was dancing in great happiness just to see this deity of Nilamadhava. And then so, I can't remember all the details, but when they got there, Vishvavasu left him there and he went to gather flowers and things. So while he was there, the deity spoke to Vidyapati and said, I want you to bring Indrajumna here to have my darshan, because I want him to worship me. And a few other exchanges went on at that time. And then then Vishvavasu came back and Nilamadhava told him, I've been so happy with your worship over the years, now I want Indrajumna to worship me. Your worship is very simple and nice, but now I want this opulent worship of a king. And similar story happened with, I was relating it to someone the other day, with Madan Mohan, because previously he was being worshipped in Mathura by someone called Damodar Chaubey. And then after some years, he explained to Damodar Chaubey, I want Sanatana Goswami. I very much enjoyed your simple family worship, because he was treated like a member of the family. But now I want Sanatana Goswami to worship me with the rules of Shastra. And so we see sometimes the Lord does that. And obviously Vishvavasu was quite disturbed, because for years, every day he came there and he's worshipping the Lord. But nonetheless, Vidyapati went back. Actually, what happened is he imprisoned Vidyapati, because he thought this was Vidyapati's scheme. And it was, as long as Vidyapati couldn't go back and to see Indrajumna, he'd be able to worship him. But somehow or other, they convinced, Lalita and Vidyapati convinced Vishvavasu to let him go back because of the desire of the Lord. And he went back and he brought Indrajumna. And so Indrajumna came with all his, soldiers, the whole, because he's the king. And he came with his whole retinue. And they came there to Nilachala, and Nilamadhava was gone. And Indrajumna thought what had happened was that Vishvavasu had taken the deity somewhere else. But then, so his soldiers surrounded the village and they arrested Vishvavasu and stuff. But then what happened was this voice from the sky said, actually, no, this is not what's happened. He's innocent, he hasn't done anything. This is just my desire, because I'm going to manifest in a different form. And he said, you go down to the sea, and this form, you'll see this Daru Brahman form floating in the water. And then, so Indrajumna Maharaj did that. He went down and he saw this heavy piece of wood floating in the water, and it was marked with the symbols of Sankha, Chakra, Gada, Padma. It had the conch, the chakra, the lotus, and the club, all marked on this wood. And they tried to move it from the water, and they couldn't move it. It was so heavy they couldn't move this wood. And so then the Lord spoke to Indrajumna and he said, bring Vishvavasu, and then you'll be able to remove me from the water. And so they did. They brought Vishvavasu and Vidyapati. They got on one side and they had a chariot built, and they were able to move the wood up onto the chariot. And then what happened was then, excuse me, what was next? Yeah, they took because in the meantime he built this temple, a huge temple. Who's been to Puri here? Quite a few, yeah? Very big temple. It's said to be 2 million years old, this temple. Anyhow, so Indrajumna had built this temple, and he engaged various persons to carve the deity, but they took the Daru Brahmana, this wood, into the temple. And then he organised various persons to carve the deity, but every time they tried to carve the deity, they take their chisels and start to chip, and the chisels would break. Because it's a special manifestation, and not an ordinary person can come. And then there's different descriptions. So it's sometimes, and this is one of the things with Jagannath is. Like many of the traditions are shrouded in mystery, so you don't really know what's true. And some things come from the Skanda Purana, some things come from Niladri Mahadoya, which is like what they call a Stala Purana, which is kind of like a local Purana. So it's not really clear on what is the truth. So some people say, or some scriptures describe how the Lord himself manifested as this old Brahmana carpenter to come and carve the deities. Others say it was Vishvakarma, the architect of the Devatas. Either way, what happened then was this person manifested to carve the deity. He said, okay, I'll carve the deity for you, but I need to have complete privacy for 21 days. I'll do it in 21 days. No one should come in and see what I'm doing. And then, so it was agreed to, and he started to carve the deity. And Indra Dhruma would come every day and listen at the door of the temple. You could hear this chip, 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 chip with the carpenter carving Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. And then after 14 days, he didn't hear it anymore. He was listening at the door and he couldn't hear. And he said, what's going on here? And he wanted to open the doors, but all his Brahmin advisors said, no, don't do it. Just be patient, just wait. But he was talking with his wife, and his wife convinced him. He said, you should open the door. And so he went and he opened the door. And he saw this form of Jagannath there, with these huge eyes and retracted arms and legs and stuff like that. And he thought the deity's incomplete. He was happy to see the form, but he thought, oh my God, I've committed such a great offense that I've interrupted the carving of the deity. The carving's not complete. And so he decided to lie down on crucial grass and fast till death. And so, the kings had great determination. They could do things like that. So he did that. And but after some time, he heard this, again, another unembodied voice. Maybe it was an unembodied voice, maybe it was a dream, I don't remember. But the Lord appeared to him and said, actually, no, I wanted to manifest like this. And just another part of the story is that sometime later, because he was always feeling that he committed a big offense, and that he had interrupted the carving of the deity, even though the Lord had told him, no, this is not the case, this is how I want to manifest. Later, Narad Muni came and explained to him what this was. And there was a story that happened in Dwarka, where Subhadrambayi was narrating to the other ladies of Dwarka, Krishna's queens, Rukmini and others, about Krishna's pastimes. Just talking about Krishna's pastimes. And there was no men there, they kept all the men out, but actually Krishna and Balaram happened to be walking past, and they stopped and they heard these pastimes being described. And they went into ecstasy. And when they went into ecstasy, their hand, you see, like when Lord Chaitanya is described, when he goes into ecstasy sometimes, there's different manifestations of ecstasy. I think there's 14 different manifestations of ecstasy. Lord Chaitanya's limbs became very extended. That's one manifestation. Another manifestation is the limbs withdraw into the body. And so he's describing, and the eyes become very wide. So Narad Muni was describing this manifestation, and he's saying, this is that form. And Subhadra also, she manifested ecstasy. So this is that form of the Lord manifesting in ecstasy. So you haven't committed any offense. Rather, you facilitated this form of the Lord manifesting. So then Indra Dhruma became very happy knowing that actually he hadn't committed an offense. He'd actually just participated in or facilitated the Lord's manifesting. And we see Narad Muni also, he does this all the time. It's not unusual for devotees to be engaged in the Lord's pastimes manifesting. Narad Muni commonly does this. So then what happened is when the deity was carved, Indra Dhruma Maharaj arranged this fantastic festival of the Abhishek of the Lord. So Abhishek means, obviously means to bathe the Lord. And so this is the first Snana Yatra. And so we understand that Snana Yatra is actually the day that Jagannath appeared. And it is quite an amazing ceremony. So what happens is so today's Purnim of the month of Jyeshtha. So the bathing takes place today, but the day before, which is the Chaturdasi, the deity is moved from the temple as I was saying before, the ceremony is called Pahandi, and he's placed in the Snan Mandap. Mandap is like, if you can see, there'll be also, you can go online today and you'll see it. There's a Sri Kshetra website or something, I can't remember what it's called, but they'll have the whole thing all day long. Will just be live broadcast of the Snan Yatra. But yeah, and you'll see the Snan Mandap. It's like there's these columns and they've got a canopy over the top, like what they call a shamayan sort of thing. There's a place near Puri called Pipli where they make all these things, and they're all very colourful. Usually red, blue, yellow, white colours like that. Very, very colourful, mirrors sewn into them, and they're sort of over the top of the deity. And they decorate the area with banana palms and paintings of forests and things like that, and very, very lovely fragrances and incense burning, aguru scent, etc. Hugely, They invest a lot, spend a lot of money on it, and then so that's yesterday he's brought to the Snan Mandap, and he's worshipped there. His regular worship goes on there. Then today, starting after Mangalati, there's a group of servants of the deity. I can't remember the name, Sorvaras or something like that, and they'll go to this well called. I can't remember, Sonakur or something like that. It's a golden well, basically. And there it's said that all the water from all the sacred, all the tirthas, the holy places, are there in that well. And so they bring large 130 pots made of copper and gold, and they keep them in the Bhog Mandap in the temple. And then later on in the day, probably around 9 or 10 o'clock, that's when Snan Yatra starts, and they bring these pots out and they bathe the deity. And if you watch them bathing, it's like, we encourage the devotees to be careful when they bathe the deity, not to touch the deity with a conch and stuff like that. There they just sort of drop the pots on the deity and all sorts of things. It's a bit wild. And so they bathe the Jagannath. But this water, when the water is brought to the Bhog Mandap and it's kept in the pots, then the priests come there, the Brahmanas, they come there and they purify or they sanctify the water with, they put turmeric in it and a whole list of things actually. I can't remember all of them. One thing I couldn't find out what it was. Most of the things I know, but one thing I couldn't find out what it was. But Chandradasi, Snan Mandap. So when the deities are brought to the Snan Mandap, they're profusely decorated. They've got flowers. A lot of the ornaments, like you see Jagannath. Normally he has a big jewel on his I think left side of his nose. Huh? The right side, is it? I can't remember. Yeah, on the right side. And so usually there's a big jewel there, but when they do this festival, they're big flower decorations. Everything's done with very beautifully done with flowers, and they very beautiful, decorate the whole area. So they sanctify it with turmeric. They also put whole rice in the water, and something called benachara or benachera. I don't know what it is. Chandan, aguru is like it's a scent which is aguru is really interesting. There's a particular type of tree which grows in the northern parts of India, Burma, places like that. And I can't remember the botanical name of it, but this tree normally has no fragrance at all. But what happens is this tree gets infected with a fungus. And then when it gets infected with the fungus, the tree produces an antibody to combat that fungus. That antibody is aguru. And so when they find these infected trees, then they take the wood and they put them in a still and they get the fragrance out. And it's the most amazing fragrance. It's one of one of my favourite fragrances, aguru, and it's really expensive. Like we got a bottle for the deities here some years ago of aguru oil. It's about what they call 10 tolas or something. I think there's a measurement they use for oil, $700, and that was a cheaper one. Some of them are like thousands of dollars. So if you ever want to get Krishna, and it's Krishna's favourite scent. So if you want to buy something for the deities, there's a place called Ensa Oud. There's a website you can get it and you can buy it. It's the best oud or aguru oil you can get. So if you want to buy something nice for Krishna, And you go to this website and get some of this oud. And then flowers, of course. Prabhupada describes that the deity is bathed in water, which nicely scented flowers have been soaking for some time, because then the water takes on that fragrance. And also medicinal herbs. They put herbs in the water. So there's different types of herbs you use for abhisheks. One is called Sarvashodhi, the other one's called Mahashodhi. And these herbs, I mean, I have the formulas at home. I don't remember them all, but some of them are Jatamangsi and different types of things put in there. They're very stimulating for the deity's skin. You know, they invigorate his skin, and they also are good for muscles and things like that. So these things are done for the pleasure of Krishna. And the whole idea is like, it mentions in the 11th canto, chapter 27, that Krishna describes to Uddhava, because this is part of the Uddhava Gita, Krishna describes in Uddhava, he said, in this age of Kali, in my deity form, the two things that I'm most fond of is bathing and decorating. So the idea is, because Krishna likes it, then we make it very, very pleasing for him. So we put nice fragrant things in the water, we make it a nice temperature. So he likes, you know, something he likes. You know, and the same when we decorate the deity, he likes the decoration. And you'll see, you know, in our ISKCON temples, I mean, just looking at the way that Radha Govardhana are dressed today, very beautifully decorated. You know, and you go to places like Tirupati, and you can see the way the Lord's decorated there, very, very beautiful. And the reason the devotees do this is because Krishna likes it. And the idea is to please Krishna. And there's a really interesting letter. Actually, no, I think it's from, I can't remember, it might be a purport. And I like it so much, we're actually going to be, in the upcoming deity worship book, we're going to be including this as like the opening statement. Prabhupada explains that when the devotee with all their heart and soul decorates Krishna and feeds Krishna and serves Krishna, Krishna smiles. And if Krishna smiles upon you just once, your life's purpose is fulfilled. So that's the idea, is to make Krishna smile. So whatever we do, we just act in a way to please Krishna, to make Krishna smile, and then our life becomes perfect. This is the purpose of deity worship. And that's the purpose of this festival, is to please Krishna. Of course, we get great satisfaction because we're participating in nice kirtans, we're able to bathe the deities, things like that. But ultimately, our goal is to do it in a way that pleases Krishna. There's many, many more things I could describe, but I'm probably all starting to think of prasadam now. Any questions at all, comments? Driti has a comment? An announcement?
Question.
Vishnu John wants to get the microphone. Now you're going to be broadcast around the world.
My question is, after hearing all those beautiful descriptions of why we celebrate those festivals for the seasonal, you can probably guess what my question is, right? How do we, obviously here we do that, we follow it because that's the same time as in India, but it's completely the opposite seasons. So how do we understand that we're doing those things for the pleasure of the Lord if it's not actually the right season? And should we do it at a different time and follow it because it's, why? I guess my question is why.
Well, my understanding of it is there's two types of festivals that the deities should follow. Some festivals are according to Tithi, like Janmashtami and things like that. Whereas other festivals, you know, really would be better associated seasonally, like Shalila Vihar. You know, like there's also another one of the summer festivals called Shalila Vihar, where the deity is you know, performing water pastimes. And you may recall, I don't know if it still happens because I'm not usually here at that time of year, but we used to have, we put the deities in the bathing tray, the Lotus Festival, because that's a summer thing and it's cooling, you know, the water's, and like, if you go to Radha Raman, and some, you know, they used to have it in Vrindavan also, they filled the holes in now, at the front of the altar, they have a fountain. Because what happens when you have a fountain, it helps to create a breeze. And then, you know, you've probably noticed it, that, like, you know, when you're near waterfalls and stuff in the heat, those droplets of water, when they settle on your body, they're very cooling. So the idea is to do things for the deity which are going to be pleasing. You know, so you'll notice in Melbourne, for instance, they celebrate Snana Yatra in the summertime, and also the Rath Yatra. So some festivals are seasonal, some festivals are according to different things. So, you could do either way. And there's also a letter where Prabhupada described to celebrate the festival on the day in a small way for the devotees, and then on a day that's more appropriate for preaching on another, like on the weekend or something like that. So Prabhupada did allow some leeway with the dates, and especially with these festivals that are associated with the seasons. They're probably better, that they're celebrated, or even do other festivals in the summer that are, like water festivals. Like I remember Venugopal Prabhu and I were discussing about doing a festival down here at the lake, putting the deities in a boat, like having a little remote control motorized boat, and taking Radha and Krishna down there and have them go around, and the devotees could all sit around doing kirtan, and they do that in Vrindavan actually. It's quite extraordinary. They have this boat festival in Vrindavan. They've taken down the Jamuna now, but they also do it at the temple. But what they do is they fill the courtyard up with water. I had this plan actually to do it in here one time, fill it up with water.
It's part of the design for the new temple.
Yeah, and they fill it up with water. What they do is they get garlands, and they make these designs with garlands, and they fill the design up with flower petals. And then around the courtyard they have 4 stations, right? Three stations actually, and there's a walkway that goes out, and I remember it really well because I was in charge of setting it up one year, and they have the deities in a boat, and the pujaris walk the boat, and they go around to these different stations, and the temple stops, the deities stop there, and the devotees make offerings, bog offerings to the deity, and then in the middle there's an island. And there's a temple built on the island, so after the deities go around several times, you get these offerings and anyone can come make offerings. Then the deities are transferred to the temple in the middle of the island, and then devotees can bring offerings and come and take close darshan. I think it's really, and the thing is, and this is the whole point of deity worship and festivals, is to facilitate that interaction between devotees and deities. Just like when we did the Lotus Festival, devotees were able to see Radha and Krishna up close, which they don't, they're further back, they don't get to see their beauty. And I'm sure you'd agree that these Radha Krishna deities are extraordinarily beautiful. I've worshipped lots of Radha Krishna deities over the years, and these deities, I'd say these deities here, the ones in Melbourne and the ones in Vrindavan, are extraordinarily beautiful. So you can adjust the dates. It's not not a problem, and especially because they're associated with the season. So you can adjust. Shanti Parana.
You mentioned the purpose is to facilitate exchanges with the deity. So the mood of separation is, and so talking about it, but also a big major mood within our movement. The first time I went to a festival in Melbourne, it was Jewel and Yatra. No idea what was going on. It's swinging. As the deities would come close to you, then you start to feel good a bit, and then they go away. So all these little feelings, these little mood of separation, they're real, they're tangible when you engage in these festivals. To facilitate.
And this is actually the service of a pujari. A pujari's service is to facilitate devotees' interactions with the deities, not to be the enjoyers of the deities. Sometimes you go to temples where, like there's a festival and there's Mahaprasadam, and the altar's covered in prasadam, but the devotees never see it. It all winds up in the pujari's rooms. Huge amounts, So the idea is like the pujari's main service is to facilitate the exchange between devotees and the deities and the devotees. Because after we installed the deities in like a few weeks ago, I went to Delhi, and we installed Lakshmi Nrsimha Prahlad. And one of the points I was making, we gave class the day after, and one of the points I was making there is like, as pujaris, we don't have to worry about getting the mercy. There is so much mercy. Like when we did that Abhishek, Shruti Kirtipur and I were doing all the bathing, and like, but just throughout the whole kind of ceremony, like I was just they kept inviting me to come forward and do this and come forward and do that. So there's so much mercy. The mercy abounds. This is Lord Chaitanya's movement. He's Namo Mahabharandaya. He's the most merciful incarnation of Krishna. So the mercy abounds. We're drowning in mercy. So we don't have to push ourselves forward to get the mercy because it's there. You know? And when they did the installation for the Panchatattva in Mayapur, I remember there was these young boys. There was 5 of them. We called them Kumaras. You know? And they were squeegeeing all the Abhishek fluids out the door. Actually, I think Garanga might have been one of those Kumaras during that installation. And were you there? You were on the altar then, weren't you?
For what?
When they installed the Panchatattva?
No, I was 4 years old now.
Weren't you one of the Kumaras squeegeeing the things out?
No, that was 2009, the second audition.
Yeah. But yeah, and these young boys, you could see it, like, you know, especially at the back, because there was also some devotees behind the altar squeegeeing out. And as the bathing fluids are sort of cascading off the deities, these young boys are just getting drowned in nectar coming from the deities. So that's the nature of this process of bhakti. Of course, it's natural we're greedy for the mercy, but you don't have to fight for it. You don't have to push others out of the way because there's so much mercy to be had. And this is the nature of the mercy. And our business is to spread that mercy as far and wide as we can. That's the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is to spread the mercy.
You witnessed one Snana Yatra where the deities were getting bombed on the head with things like that. So we endeavour to avoid that for the pleasure of it. So obviously we're trying to be careful, but it seems like people get carried away in the mood and enthusiasm of doing the best of pleasure or war.
Yeah, but it's always a good thing not to allow the enthusiasm to overpower common sense. You know, because we are dealing with a person. It's just like, you know, funny story is like years ago, there was a devotee in Vrindavan, and he was distributing the water from the Arti, and he came to one particular Maharaj, and he thought, oh, you know, I want to give Maharaj lots and lots of mercy, so he emptied the whole thing on his head. It's not, you know, you've got to also, you know, like, consider the person you're serving. You know, like, and that's personalism. If it's just about you, that's impersonalism. But, you know, consider the person you're serving. What's the exchange like for them? You know, it's just like you go poking someone in the eye with a conch shell. Is that a very comfortable experience? Or you go bathing, you know, in the middle of winter, you bathe someone with freezing cold water. Is that a very comfortable experience? So, you know, that's the point I was making earlier, is the whole idea when we're doing these festivals is personsider the comfort of the deity, consider the pleasure of the deity, what's pleasing for Krishna. And that's, you know, that's personalism. That's our process, is we're trying to develop a relationship with Krishna. This relationship, you know, in any relationship you have, if you're very attentive to the person's needs, their interests, their concerns, then you're going to get a very nice reciprocal exchange. But if you just have it in your mind, this is what I'm going to do, and you couldn't care about them, how does the relationship develop? It'll be very kind of stilted, it'll be very kind of restrained, and it might not develop very well at all. So when we're serving the deity, if we can keep this mood in mind, and this is one of the points that Prabhupada emphasized a lot, the deity as a person. Same in this wonderful story of Sakshi Gopal. Pratimanahi tumi sakshat prajendananda. My dear Lord, you're not a statue. You poke the deity with a conch, it means that your concept is he's a statue, because you're not careful. He says, my dear Lord, you're not a statue, you're directly the son of Nanda Maharaj, Krishna. So he saw the deity was Krishna directly. And if you observe all the various festivals and rituals we do in the deity worship, they're all focusing on the personality and trying to, you know, just like, you know, in the morning when we're doing darshan, what do? We show a mirror. We show a mirror to the statue. You know, we're showing a mirror to say that Krishna can see himself. You know, it's like, you look at every aspect of the deity worship, it's focused on personalism. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Snana Yatra ki jai.